So we're going to be talking about how communication is the key to a healthy relationship. Specifically, the communication between Elm and JavaScript. Ya está, ya puedes quitarlo. So first of all, who am I? I'm Miguel. I'm a full-stack developer here at Source. I love Go and Elm. I also write some JavaScript, while secretly and not so secretly missing Elm. And you can find me on... Shit. ¿Cómo se da el...? Eso. You can find me on Twitter and GitHub at erizocosmico. So first of all, before we get into all that, what is Elm? Elm is a functional programming language that compiles to JavaScript, just like ClojureScript, PureScript, and blah, blah, blah script. There's like 1,000 of them. But why Elm specifically? First of all, it has a very great interoperability with JavaScript, and not in a traditional way. Like you'd expect to have some FFI to communicate with JavaScript, which is probably the most common way to communicate with a host language. But Elm does it in a completely different way. One of the good things about Elm is that it can be embedded in any JavaScript application. So that allows you to gradually move your code from JavaScript to Elm, or just introduce small parts and communicate with the JavaScript parts of your application. It has no runtime exceptions, like for real, no Red Inc., which is the company sponsoring the development of the language, and probably the biggest commercial user of it, has never had a single exception in production, and they've been running Elm for years. It's also crazy fast. You can see in this chart here, the naive implementation of the to-do app in Elm is faster than the React and Angular 1 and 2 optimized versions of it. It also has a compiler you can love. It has very well and detailed error messages that will guide you through it. And it's like a thing in the community to make the error messages accessible and good so the developer can understand them. But why do we need to communicate with JavaScript? First of all, we need to integrate existing libraries. The JavaScript ecosystem is huge, and we can't expect to have everything that's available in JavaScript in Elm. That's just not possible. So imagine we have we want to add syntax highlighting to an Elm application. Probably, I don't think there's any syntax highlighter for Elm. So you need to use some from JavaScript. Also, to provide the implementation from some browser APIs like web animations or service workers or something like this. And also, and the most important thing, to communicate with other parts of your JavaScript applications. As I said, any Elm application can be embedded in your JavaScript application, so you want to communicate with it. As I said, Elm does not do traditional FFI. It goes a different way to that. We'll see why. We have 3 ways of communicating between Elm and JavaScript. One is native modules, second is ports, and the third is flags. Even though it's not actually bidirectional, it's just one directional, just to communicate JavaScript with Elm. So we're going to go into native modules first. This is a native module, as ugly as it seems. And this is actually nicer because it has the arrow functions. It gets uglier. So as you can see, native modules have a few problems. First one is they're a pain in the ass. You can see here this. Well, using everything in the Elm standard library is things like this. So it's probably very awful to use manually. Also, native modules cannot be published to the package registry. For them to be published there, they need to be reviewed by the Elm team. Why is that? Because if you publish native modules in JavaScript, you can do just whatever. and you may break the guarantees that Elm gives you, like no runtime exceptions. So for that, the team needs to review them, and it's a very long process. And also, and probably the biggest red flag for this, is their behavior and how they work is totally undocumented on purpose. Like, it kind of grew organically because they needed them to implement the native parts of the standard library. And it's just something you can do, but it's not really meant for developers to use. And also, it can change at any time with no notice. So when should we use native modules? Obviously, if you're contributing to the Elm core libraries, or for example, libraries that provide some web APIs or something like this. And also, if you don't want to expose ports on your application, because ports require the user to implement something in the JavaScript side. So for example, if you're implementing, I don't know, a local storage library, you don't want the user to be writing the bindings in JavaScript. You just want the user to be able to use it. So in this case, you need native modules. But if you do, you know you will have to go through the whole process of the Elm team reviewing every single update you make so you can break the guarantees. And probably that's all the use cases that are good for native modules. Now we're going to go into ports, which is the de facto way of communicating Elm and JavaScript. We could describe a port like one-directional channel of communication. But I said that ports are bidirectional. Because of that, we have two kinds of ports. We have incoming ports and outgoing ports. And all ports need to be declared in a port module. Like when you declare your module, it needs to have before a port. So when you see a declaration of a module, if it has port, you know this module is going to contain ports. One common pattern is to put all your ports in one single file and have them all contained there. And obviously, your application needs to be embedded as opposed to just doing Elm make and generating an HTML with all the JavaScript compiled there. It needs to be embedded because you need to implement some JavaScript counterparts. So first are outgoing ports. With an outgoing port, you can send a message to JavaScript. For example, in this, the port finds synonyms. We give it a string, which is the word we want the synonym for, and this generates a command that will be executed by the Elm runtime. And then we have incoming ports, which is a subscription to messages. And then JavaScript sends messages to this port, and we get them as a subscription. So with this, we have port synonyms. This is how we get the synonyms back from JavaScript. And we will receive a list of strings, which is the synonyms received. And we will have to pass it a function that will tell Elm how to go from this list of strings to a message. And then from that, we'll get a subscription of messages. So from the JavaScript side, we subscribe to outgoing ports and send messages through incoming ports back to Elm. We do app.port, the name of the port, in this case, find synonyms. We subscribe to it. And then we implement the callback. And this is whatever we want to do with what Elm has sent us. And then we can send through the incoming port, app.ports.synonyms, send, and we just send whatever we want to send. Can we send any value? Obviously not. In JavaScript, there's no type check whatsoever, so we could send just whatever the hell we want, or even nulls, what don't even exist in Elm as a concept. So because in JavaScript bad things happen, we need to put some order in there, and like, oops. Porque hay un botón de reset. Okay. So we can only pass basic types, lists, arrays obviously of basic types, tuples and records, everything of basic types. And also we can pass any JSON encode value, which is arbitrary JSON. And some types, like maybes, lists, arrays, tuples, and records, are transformed to their JavaScript counterparts for it to be easier for the user. Like, you wouldn't want to have to unwrap the maybes in the JavaScript, they are just converted for you. And even though this is a functional programming language, we cannot pass functions through ports. So there's a thing in ports called border protection. That means that every time you send something from JavaScript to Elm, there's a type check. And if the types don't match, it throws an exception right away. But the exception stays in the JavaScript side because it's their fault. So the Elm runtime doesn't have any wrong value because that would cause some errors on the Elm side. And we said the Elm side never throws runtime exceptions. The last way of communicating Elm and JavaScript, well, in this case, JavaScript to Elm, are flags. Flags, we can think of flags as a way to pass some configuration or initialization values from JavaScript to Elm. And this is done only once and during initialization. We can instantiate an app in JavaScript in two ways. One is elm.whatever your module is named, embed, which is to put the app in a node on the DOM, and full screen that just appends it to the body. And we just have to give it whatever we want to pass as flags as a second argument here or as the first here. And that's just how we pass flags. But how do we implement the flags also in the Elm side? We first must define our flags type, which is just a record of the types we want. And then we have to change our init. Init is a tuple with the initial model and the initial command that will be run when the app is started. Instead of having this, we transform it into a function that, given the flags, returns us the initial model and the initial command. So you can use the flags to set something in your model, which will be your state, and then you'll have it there throughout the rest of the application. And then the other last change we have to do is, instead of using HTML program with flags, and everything else works just fine. So just to recap, use ports to communicate between Elm and JavaScript. Use flags to send initialization values to Elm. Don't use native modules unless you really have to, and give Elm a shot because it rocks. Thank you.